Welcome back to part 3. So I said I would look at this particular political cartoon. We're going to look at what is it trying to say. So this will act as a review from part 2, and I will pause the video so that we have time to actually discuss it. These are the 4 points of the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is incredibly important because it will shape how we deal with European nations and Latin America for years to come. It's also Monroe's most famous accomplishment as president, even though he actually doesn't write most of it. His Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, writes most of it. He will also become our 6th president of the United States. So here's a review from part 2. Read the statements below and determine who or what is speaking. There will be a pause in the video so that you guys have enough time to answer each of the 4 statements. If you can't remember it, that's okay. We're going to go over the answers. Now, the answers to number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the following. They will flash in green on your screen. Hopefully you were able to get those answers. Again, it's review. If you got 3 to 4 of those correct, you're making really good shape. If not, you need to go back and review part 2. Now, this political cartoon, or actually these cartoons, really go over the Monroe Doctrine. And I know I keep talking about it, but it's incredibly important. Both of these actually have 2 different messages that we're going to look at together as a class. So I'll pause the video as we discuss. Now we're moving on to this idea of peace, prosperity, and a growth that's giving Americans a sense of national unity. Now, basically, what's going to unite us in practical terms is the building of roads and canals. It's going to help unify the nation. They made traveling easier and link people from different regions of the country. All well and good, however, all good things don't last. So there will be regional conflicts that come up, or things that divide us, specifically in terms of slavery and the Missouri Compromise. The American system. Well, Henry Clay is a U.S. representative from Kentucky, and he believed a strong national economy would promote a strong national feeling. Makes sense. If you have a lot of money, then you're probably going to feel good about yourself, not just as an individual, but as a nation. So, Clay developed the plan, the American system, which would be a series of measures intended to make the United States economically self-sufficient. He also had 2 points that were incredibly important, which you will see all of this is in red, meaning that you should copy it down. So as I was saying, he had 2 very important points. The national bank he wanted to have, but it needed to have a single currency. And he also wanted to use money from tariffs to improve roads and canals. So that extra money from those taxes on imports and exports, he wanted to use to improve roads and canals to make things easier for the American people. Now, the roads and canals. You have the Cumberland Road. It was the first road federally built by the government, so using government money. And the Erie Canal, which is located in New York, and it made water transportation easier. Very important because today, the best way, cheapest way, is still water. When we transport goods, we still use water in terms of shipping things, instead of the use of what you would think would be faster, like planes or any other kind of transportation. So, the Erie Canal was incredibly important to shipping and our economy at the time. Now, this era of good feelings. America is feeling really good about itself. And so on the next slide, I'm actually going to tell you guys about specifically why America is feeling so good. But this phrase, the era of good feelings, refers to the period from 1815 to 1825. The United States enjoyed a time of peace, pride, and progress. Those three words will be broken down on the next slide. Also, we're going to be further strengthened by two Supreme Court cases that's going to improve the power of the federal government. First one, McCulloch v. Maryland. The court asserted the implied powers of Congress in allowing for the creation of a national bank. Basically, those powers were implied. They were not directly stated in the Constitution. However, it did allow for Congress to create the national bank. Very big deal. And the second is Gibbons v. Ogden. The court said that the states could not interfere with the power of Congress to regulate interstate trade or to regulate trade between states. That's a big deal because basically the states can no longer step on the toes of Congress, and that was upheld by these two Supreme Court cases, specifically by the Chief Justice, John Marshall. Now, we'll have an activity later in time dealing with these two Supreme Court cases. But for now, we'll continue on with peace, pride, and progress. Now, this is the breakdown of each of those words. So let's go over peace first. So why are we in times of peace? Well, we have peace with England because we're growing a friendship that's based on trade. Yes, we beat them. Yes, we may not be their best friend yet, but we are trying to come to an agreement because if the United States can trade with Britain and Britain can trade with the United States, both sides will be making money. Peace with Spain, on the other hand, is more or less because Spain has their own issues that they're dealing with. Those colonies with Bolivar and other liberators, it's all getting a little bit hectic for Spain, so they're dealing with their own problems. Peace with France, well, again, Napoleon and his Napoleonic Wars are devastating France. So they have their own issues on the home front to deal with. So that gives us this really good time period of peace. Pride. Now, why are Americans or U.S. citizens feeling good about themselves? Well, they fought off the British during the War of 1812 for one. They doubled their size of the nation with the purchase of the Louisiana Territory. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson. Also, they acquired Florida from Spain. Technically, thanks to Andrew Jackson and his need to feel like a great conqueror, because he didn't actually listen to Monroe. He had no direct orders to do so, but because of his actions, we are actually going to get Florida. Now, progress. Progress you can see in two ways, actually. One way is the literal uniting of America with roads and canals across the Northeast. And then we have the economy is doing incredibly well because we're trading with Europe. Because of the devastation of the Napoleonic Wars, they need us to trade with. And because they need us so much, we're going to be making money off of their unfortunate situation. But our economy is doing well. The last point down at the bottom is about the fact that there are going to be immigrants coming from Europe and they're going to give us a large surplus of labor. That's a really big deal because I don't want you guys to forget that there are going to be Irish immigrants and Chinese immigrants and other immigrants from Europe that are going to help literally build this nation. So this is the era of good feelings broken down for you. Now I told you guys about the regional conflicts, sectionalism. It's disagreements between different regions. And because of these disagreements, it's actually going to threaten the Union. Now, the Union is the whole country being together, united, the Union. We all know the Civil War is coming, and this is one of the issues that is going to put a Band-Aid over the situation, the Missouri Compromise. And the situation or the issue is the idea of slavery. Now, you'll see the things in red. Those are what I want you to write down, but you can continue listening. So, to give you background, there were 22 states in the Union in 1819. Half of the states were pro-slavery in the South. The other half were anti-slavery in the North, and slavery was illegal. There was an exact balance between slave and free states, and that gave them equal representation in the U.S. Senate. Then Missouri wanted to be admitted as a slave state. Well, that would interrupt the balance or upset the balance. So in comes the Missouri Compromise, all right, of 1820. And under this agreement, there were three things. Missouri was going to be admitted to the Union as a slave state. Maine was going to be admitted as a free state. And you'll see number 3, whatever definition or way to explain it works for you. So you can either write it in black or you can write the one that's in red. The agreement also banned slavery in the northern part of the Louisiana Territory, or you can write slavery banned in any new states or territories north of the latitude 3630. Now that line will make more sense when I go over it in the picture on the next slide. So the Missouri Compromise kept the balance between slave and free states. Again, this is really just a band-aid because no one really fixes this issue of slavery in Congress. So this will come up again in about 30 years. So this issue is not completely resolved. Now, here are the things I wanted to point out to you. So you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner where Maine is admitted as a free state in 1820. Then you'll see Missouri is circled in red. That's admitted as a slave state in 1821. So now we're good. We got 12 and 12. We're equal. There is balance in the U.S. Senate. Now, the other condition was the last point. That's the line in dark blue where it says slavery cannot go into the unorganized territory that is light blue. So that is closed to slavery. What is open to slavery, though, is the Arkansas Territory. Right? Again, this is just kind of a band-aid over the situation of slavery. So we look at the last of the revolutionary generation. We have George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe. These guys are considered our founding fathers, along with other gentlemen who helped create a foundation for America's principles and lasting impact on the world. This is a visual summary of the things that we've gone over. Those 2 key ideas for Chapter 9, the idea of nationalism and sectionalism. So first, I want to look at nationalism. We gained new territory. We were able to get Spain. We were able to get the Louisiana Territory, which doubled our nation's size. Also, the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine was incredibly important because we put a stamp over the Americas and said, hey, Europe, you can't mess with our affairs, and we won't mess with your affairs. And that's going to have a lasting impact in United States history. The American system was incredibly important because Henry Clay wanted to make the United States economically self-sufficient, which will only improve the country as a whole. He wanted to build roads and canals. He wanted a national bank with a single currency. All things that are incredibly important to the development of a nation. We have the era of good feelings, peace, pride, and progress from 1815 to 1825. So America is feeling good about ourselves. And then the American culture. I didn't talk about it, but specifically just understand that America's getting this literal new identity. It is no longer trying to associate itself with Great Britain. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have this introduction of new music, new art, new literature. And this is going to be the American identity, the frontier, what makes us our own. 2 very famous pieces of literature are The Last of the Mohicans as well as Sleepy Hollow. You probably have heard about them. There's a TV show called Sleepy Hollow. Well, that actually comes about during the time period of the era of good feelings. So that's nationalism, and that's why we feel really proud of ourselves. However, there is this underlining idea of sectionalism, disagreements from different regions. And the first one is that many people were opposed to the American system. They really didn't get the fact that you're going to take money from the government and build roads. Like, these dirt roads are fine. Why do we need stone roads? Well, they'll realize that stone roads make things easier. Also, the really big issue of slavery. As you start expanding your union and the United States is getting larger, what are you going to do with the idea of slavery? So in comes the Missouri Compromise, and that literally acts as a band-aid, okay, to the North and the South. And this will come back up again in 1850, but for now, the issue has been pushed to the side. So that's Chapter 9 in a visual summary. If you want to write this down, the video will be paused so that you can write it. But that's Chapter 9. And we're going to eventually move on, of course. Next time I see you will be Chapter 10. And we'll continue with the United States and its push toward westward expansion. As I've mentioned before, John Quincy Adams will become our sixth president. And the era of good feelings has passed, and his presidency is coming in with an air of corruption. So here's a short video about his life.
John Quincy Adams served his country from boyhood until literally the day he died. Born in 1767 near Boston, he wasn't even a pimple-faced teen when his dad took him to Europe as a personal assistant on diplomatic missions. He grew up to be America's best ambassador and its worst smiler. He was a hit as Monroe's Secretary of State, but he wasn't a lock for president in 1824. There were 4 candidates, including Andrew Jackson, but no one got enough votes to win outright. The House of Representatives voted and chose Adams for president. Why the House of Representatives voted for Adams is the big problem. In what was called a corrupt bargain, Adams made Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House, his Secretary of State, apparently in exchange for Clay supporting Adams. JQA was an honest guy, but it looked like a bribe. And Andrew Jackson, who got the most votes, was the sorest loser ever and helped make Adams' presidency miserable. Adams supported Clay's plan, called the American System. It involved building roads, canals, a national university, and more. Jackson also had a plan. It involved all his pals in Congress blocking everything Adams wanted. Jackson won their rematch in 1828, but Adams won a House seat in 1830 and helped lead the anti-slavery movement. In 1848, he had a stroke on the House floor and died. Hey, retirement's not for everybody.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real. Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.